Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. It's time to know more so you can say no more. It's time for the Clearly Christian Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Cy Smith.
Hi, I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this is Clearly Christian Education, a podcast about what it means to see the world from God's perspective, and then the impact this has on training the next generation to live a life consistent with a biblical worldview. Thanks for listening again, and if you like the show, I encourage you to leave a review, hit the subscribe button. That'll let others know the show's worth listening to, certainly help advance our cause in Christian education. Our guest on the show this episode was Mr. Dan Beckering. He was the superintendent or head of school at Southwest Christian High School in Chaska, Minnesota, and we really talked about education as transformation. It was a great episode, so I look forward to spending just a few more minutes talking about that today. So the episode is now live, so just look for the picture of Dan, and you can click on that link, and it'll take you right there. So with that, let me go ahead and bring in our show's producer, Brian Lefelock with Brian Media Strategy. So Brian, what'd you think about the show today with Dan?
It was really interesting in some of the things that he was talking about. I'm really interested in the idea of the transformation. He talked about public schools and society really in general being based on success. What's my grade point average? What's my job? How much money am I making? And yet there's being made in Jesus and how maybe that gets forgotten. I'm just wondering, is the cat out of the bag there? Because the whole world bases things on how much money you make, what school you go to. How do you add the cultural part in, the real part in?
Yeah, that's a great point. And unfortunately, the way education is set up today, you're not going to have, when you take the biblical out of it, and you take God out of it, and when you take that aspect out of it and say, well, that's all subjective. You can develop into whatever person you want. Unfortunately, government education just doesn't have any choice, right? You have to find some sort of commonality. So you say, well, what's one goal that we all have in common? The A, or the perfect score, or the this. Performance is the only thing you have left, right? Because we refuse to say, this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong. Since we can't agree on some of these other things, or I'm not going to tell you that your truth is not right for you, so I don't want to tell you what kind of person you should grow into being, because, that's really your call. So since we've just taken God's perspective right out of education, all you're left with is what we've got. And that's just, that's how it's going to be, unless you choose an education that throws it back in and says, no, wait a minute, let's think about education completely different. Those things are great, but they're only a reflection of the true spiritual formation that you're trying to be. In other words, if I'm the person that God wants me to be on the inside and I'll give my best effort in class. You don't have to tell me to get an A. I do that because it's the right thing to do. Now, maybe my best effort is a B, but I'm doing it because I'm working for the Lord. This is how He's created me. I'm giving it everything. I want to give 110% in this basketball game because that's how He's created me, right? So I want to try hard. You don't have to tell me that, achieve these things to get into college or to get a good job and things like that. I'm doing this for a cause that's far bigger than those things. It's about who God wanted me to become, maximizing my humanness on the face of the earth because He put me here for a reason, right? And that's really all that's going to matter, because when I'm dead and gone, we've all heard those stories. Is the old person sitting on the front porch who is still talking about their glory days of high school. Oh, geez. If that's all you're hanging on to, that's not a meaningful life.
How did you do it, Cy? So let me push back a little bit. So you've reached the highest level of yours. You've worked through the ranks, like you said, and so has Dan. And you've done it with a Christian biblical perspective. And yet you're really successful. How do you marry those things? Because I'm still thinking there's some corporate executive somewhere that's hiring people, and he's looking at the 4.0 versus the 3.9, and he's choosing the 4.0. He never even gets to meet the person.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's going to be hard to overcome that dynamic, right? Because that's just how our culture is wired. And for me personally, and that's why your career path is gone the way it has. Have I given all I have? And I think the Lord works like that, especially when you're a believer. He's got, that conviction and that spirit in you to say, you know what, I'd like to do more. I'd like to do something else. I'd like to do blah, blah, blah. I think he plants those desires in your heart where he says, you know what, I created you to go a little further in this field. I didn't, and it wasn't, like I said, I taught for 2, 3, 4 years before I knew, it was early on that, like Dan, that, I had enough feedback that people were saying, hey, you need to do leadership. I think you were created for something a little, not that it's higher than teaching, but I think you were created for other things. Now, to do that, I had to go back and get degrees, and you have to go back and you do have to run through some of those things that we've set in place, right? And so that's just the nature of what exists. But you kind of know it in your spirit that, wow, I probably need to go a different direction, or I can do a little bit more, or you know what, these things, maybe these A's, B's, and C's, it's good, it's okay, but I probably had it in me to do a little bit more.
That's what I was, as you were answering that question, it reminded me that Jesus, God, isn't done with us at any point.
Yeah.
It's never too late to build your character. If you've missed those things along the way, it's never too late. So Dan also talked about cell phones. I was really intrigued. He said at his school, they've gotten rid of them completely. And that was shocking as a parent of young kids. How would I get in touch with them? Like the whole world would fall apart. I'm interested in your thoughts about that. You seem surprised that he'd gotten rid of them completely.
Yeah, I was. That was interesting because I've only heard of a handful that have gone that direction, already. And they're bringing him to school the way I understood him say that, but then they're putting him in some sort of other location where it almost even sounds like they're magnetized lock. And that's what I was going to ask him. Do they release the magnets at the end of the day, and then that's when they can go get those phones? Because it almost sounds like they really, really have no access there. What we've done is what a lot of schools have done is, they bring them to school, but then when they walk into the classroom, they put them into a pouch on the door, over by the front of the room where they know that, hey, unless the teacher needs you to get this out for some reason, it stays in the pouch. And then you can pick it up on your way to the next class. But then when you get in your next class, you're putting it in that pouch. And that seems to have pacified the parent that's like, well, I know he's at least going to check it between classes. And so he might get that text message to, don't forget to take your sister home, or don't forget to pick up your, the cleats from grandma, or your lunch, or, whatever, they know they might be able to get it. That seems to have pacified a lot of families. But most schools now are saying, yeah, exactly what he said. Hey, that temptation is just too great. So we either have to put them away, or we have to banish them completely, or we have to figure out some way to say, because when they first came out, we all thought, oh, well, they could use them educationally. And so, we don't want to poo-poo this. We'll just make sure they only use them when we want them to. That didn't work. Yeah, we tried, but it just didn't work. And we don't need them that often, right? And now everybody has a Chromebook, or they have a laptop in front of them of some kind. So you can access all that stuff through your laptop that the school gave you. So you absolutely do not need, that phone while the teacher's talking.
Yeah, we never even had phones when we were growing up, and we didn't know what we were missing, did we? So did you notice during the show, Cy, there was one point where he was talking about the phones, and I think he got a notification on his. You could hear it. Yeah, as a producer, I could hear it. And it kind of distracted him for a little bit. He looked across, and I think he was kind of reading it, and he came back, and it's like, oh, I'm doing a show. That's it. It was a real live present demonstration of how it steals our awareness.
Oh, yeah. Well, right now, mine is, truth be told, mine is buzzing ding, like crazy in my pocket, and I'm just fighting that every bit I can. But, yep, they do not need my attention right now.
So I'll let you go in just a second, but I want to ask, when he also talked about AI being a real challenge, a hurdle on the forefront. You talked a little bit about how you think it could be good and it could be bad, and probably both. I'm interested in digging deeper with you about AI.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's probably not a week goes by that somebody doesn't either send us an article or write something on it, or tell us as educators, listen, this is the next thing you need to understand. It's coming at us so fast and furious, I can barely keep up with it, because I just installed ChatGPT. I thought that was, going to be the end all. And now everybody's saying, oh, that's old school. That's so 6 months ago. Now you need to install this. Now you need to install that. And what they're coming out with, of course, is now there's certainly AI for different segments of society. So marketing has a good platform, and medicine has a good platform, and others have a good platform. And so there's so many different ways that it's going to go now. But like I said, I think we're really foolish if we say, I don't think I need to know it. I don't think I need to use it. I mean, we've even talked about it as a school in our marketing department is, hey, this is a great email, but could it be a little bit better? I mean, it's just an email, or it's just a communication with parents. Maybe we should at least let AI give it a shot, and then we'll clean it up, because maybe it'll say something in a better way or a better tone, or forget or remember something that we forgot. So everybody's, moving that direction. I think it's, like I said, it's a little scary, and I can't remember. Oh, I know the two words are generative AI versus predictive AI. And that's where we're really going to have to know, because one, like I said in that show, one of those forms, and I can't speak to it, no pun intended, intelligently right now, but one of those forms is, hey, we can use AI to solve problems, to make life better, like I said, with medicine, or we can use it to take the lazy way out, right? Because we don't want to use AI so that you don't have any critical thinking skills, you don't know how to read, you can't even draft a good paragraph. If you're using AI to cut corners there and not develop into the capable and competent human that you need to develop into, wow, we've done ourselves a massive disservice as a culture. But if you can use it in a way that says, hey, these things are all in place, now let's use it to take it to the next level and find some answers that we've never been able to find before in our humanness. And so, that might be worthwhile. Well, thanks so much for asking those questions. Those are good, and I look forward to following those things up. Well, thank you again for joining me today. Again, the extra credit version of Clearly Christian. We just appreciate you, again, following along, and I trust that now you know more about these particular issues, especially education is transformation. Again, thank you for helping us spread the word. If you like to follow or subscribe, hit that like button, leave a review, let others know the show's worth listening to. Thank you. We certainly appreciate that. And again, remember, the only way we're going to turn things around in our country is to increase the number of people who hold the biblical worldview. And the greatest hope to get there is Christian education. Thank you again.
Thank you for listening to the Clearly Christian podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. Hear more episodes at clearlychristianeducation.com. If you'd like more information about Christian education in your neighborhood, or if you're interested in education opportunities at Mansfield Christian School, or if you agree with Dr. Smith and want to help him in his mission to influence and awaken Christian America, you can send Dr. Smith an email through the clearlychristianeducation.com website. Message him on the Clearly Christian LinkedIn or Facebook page, or call the Clearly Christian Connection line at 419-756-5651. This has been the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith on clearlychristianeducation.com, brought to you in conjunction with Mansfield Christian School, a Bryan Media production.